Hey, it is a Trey Bolin, and I'm here with Origin Stories and my friend Barbara. I'm super excited for her to share a little bit about her origins, but let's let her introduce herself and tell you what she does.
Hey everyone. So I am Barbara Zinser. I am currently a Charles Reinhardt realtor and have been for 17 years. My origin story starts way back when I wondered, is real estate the thing for me? And I found out that it is not good for part-timers. And at the time, my original thought was there, I had small children, and you
Mm.
just cannot pick up and go and just drop everything when someone wants to go see a house.
Yeah.
So it took later in life for my children to go off to college. And
Mm,
then I suffered that sense of just depression.
yeah.
I was unprepared, and no woman prepared me for that loss of these kids that I had spent all these years raising and having them around. And
Wow.
so my poor husband, had to kind of get me out of it. And he came home one day and he looked at me and he said, "You need a job." And I said, "I don't need a job. What I need, I want my children back. That's what I
Yes.
need." And of course, they weren't going
Oh,
to come back as much as I wanted it.
right.
So I took his advice. And a friend had told me when I mentioned, I think I might want to get into real estate. She said, "You must see my manager. He's great and he'll talk to you." And so I did. And I was very nervous the first time. And then I went back for a second talk with him. And he said, "I must tell you, new agent training is starting Monday." And I thought, dear Lord, this is it. I'm really going in and I'm going to start this. And that was 17 years ago when
Wow.
shortly thereafter was an implode of real estate. I mean, Ford Motor had its problems. The whole car
Mm,
industry had their
yeah.
problems and looking for a buyout. Um, we had the pharmaceutical company in Ann Arbor, Pfizer,
Yep.
who all of a sudden decided they were pulling out, and that was
Yes.
2,000 jobs.
I remember that. It was so chaotic.
And then the third thing was the whole mortgage industry imploded. And so now all of a sudden you had people without jobs who had mortgages that were losing their homes. So it was foreclosures, it was
Mm,
short sales. And I was just starting this career. And I said, the one good thing about it, where I felt at a deficit, because a lot
mm,
of my colleagues, they grew up here, they'd been in Ann Arbor for forever, they knew everyone, they knew all the
yeah.
streets and communities. And I thought, how in the world will I ever compete? Well, this made the difference because they had never been through a time like that. So we were
Mm,
all having to learn the new industry and what that was going to be like to, try and sell homes and try and comfort sellers who
mm,
were panicking and buyers who had more inventory than they could ever want to see.
yeah.
So it was an interesting time, and that's how I started my business.
I think that really could encourage someone listening to your story because times are kind of similar where things are really challenging and thinking about, okay, how do I start something new in a really hard time? What would be one of the things that you would say helped you during that time frame?
Well, this is where we start the Aunt Rose story. I think it's a perfect segue to Aunt Rose. And so I moved to Ann Arbor in 2000 when I got married. I didn't know anything about Michigan. I certainly didn't know anything about Ann Arbor. And so you could have planted me on the moon. And that is what this was like. I knew nothing.
Mm,
However, I had one resource, and that was my husband's aunt, Aunt Rose, who I love dearly, will always love her dearly. And she became my first best friend.
oh,
And Aunt Rose had found the home that we rented. She was in her community over 50 years. And like I said, she was a real Ann Arborite and knew
mm,
everything. And so she already had all the answers to the questions that I would have.
wow.
She didn't drive, and she was about 4'5". And so she would say, I'd say, Aunt Rose, where's the dry cleaner? Where's the supermarket? And she'd say, come pick me up. And she would sit in the passenger seat and she would point, like make a left, make a right. And she would help me to navigate the streets. Unless you have walked this portion of your life, it's
Yes.
hard to understand how you could
Yeah.
feel so out of place. And
Hmm.
yet you needed to be up and running as fast as possible. I mean, I now had a new
Right.
husband and I had two children relying on me.
Right.
So
I
Aunt
think that's
Ruth,
so interesting because now we depend on our phones. How
mhm,
do I get from point A to B? Just put it in there, boom. But having a physical person to be that guide, to take you through the town, to show you where the different things are, to be that resource, that really makes that personal connection, and how about that now as a person. Do you become an Aunt Rose? Have you become an Aunt Rose for other people?
I have. And it's so funny you should say that because it happened just as recently as yesterday.
I love that.
So there was a new community that opened. They're rental properties in Ann Arbor. And I was watching it being built and all that. And I thought, you know what? I have some time. I'm going to run in there. And they have an office. Obviously, they're taking applications for new renters that would come in. And I thought, I'm going to go in, I'm going to introduce myself, and I want to know. I want to learn. I want to know what this is and see if there's an opportunity that maybe a client of mine could use, this place as a home. So I went in and I met one of the managers, and she was so kind. We spent all sorts of time together. And one of the things she said to me is, well, I'm kind of new. Well, there's the Aunt Rose right there. What do you mean you're new? And she said, I actually commute. I live in East Lansing and I come here a couple
Wow.
of days a week. And I said, so you really don't know where you are? I said, no, do I have information for you? And so I went home. I gathered booklets that I have on Ann Arbor and some of the
Yeah.
surrounding towns, Dexter, Chelsea, Manchester, Ypsilanti. And they are all these little gems of booklets that talk about the schools and the websites that are available and, calendar of events and parks and recreation and all the things that you could want to know, quickly. And so I went back with a folder and I said, see, I am here for you.
Yes. Well, and then being that resource for somebody else, that's going to build a connection that's going to last longer than, you know, the little instant connections that we make online. I think there's something lasting about when you make that in-person connection.
Yeah, she said to me, there is one realtor that I do know and that I have, kind of worked with. I said, well, I don't know. Has anybody done anything like this for you?
Right, right. And taking that difference. It sounds like you've worked a lot to set yourself apart in this industry.
Well, I found that it's about questions and it's about listening because you really won't get to know someone's story just like you're doing right now until you ask a few questions and you dive in a little deeper, because outside of that we go through our days just kind of, hi, how are you? Yeah, I'm fine. How are you? You're fine. We're all fine. But when you start to dig a little deeper, then you get something much richer. You get a friendship and just information that's so valuable. And then for me, I'm always looking, because of the SiriusNet connection that we
Yeah.
have. It is a referral business that the listeners may not know about, but it was a business that was built for independent business owners to connect with one another. And so, that's always in my mind as to how can I refer business. And so either it's business to business or it's somebody who has a need that says, oh man, I'm really struggling. Who do you know? Or what can you
Yeah.
do? And so I keep a laundry list of different, in fact, I call it Barbara's valued vendors. And so these could be painters and plumbers and
Mhm.
carpet cleaners and stagers and, whatever is the resource that that person needs. And if I don't have it, I will tell you, oh, this side. This company, we're around over 50 years, and there are probably 250 Reinhardt agents. And so, what I don't know and what I don't have immediate access to, one email out. And let me tell you, we are so good at working together that I always get responses.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I know that your email says that you have that Aunt Rose difference and you love to help people with the Aunt Rose experience. Is that what you're talking about? Going that next step for people?
absolutely. And it's not that everyone needs it. And I think sometimes people are afraid of it. Oh, you're really kind of getting into somebody's life and whatever. But my feeling is it isn't for forever. I didn't need Aunt Rose's help for forever, but I surely needed it right in the beginning. And
Yeah.
that is the help that I offer is when you need that, please pick up the phone and call. Send
Yeah.
me a text, send me an email, whatever that is, because I have been there. And boy, nothing will make you appreciate, a helping hand more than when you're in need. And the fact that somebody is kind and generous and they help.
Well, yes, for sure. And I feel like those times of needs can be super unexpected. So I'm curious when you have big changes that come in the real estate realm or maybe unexpected changes that you've had to adapt to, what do you look to? Like what encourages you? How do you overcome those challenges?
Well, one of the most recent challenges is business related, real estate related. And NAR, the National Association of Realtors, was recently sued. It was a big lawsuit. They paid out a lot of money. And this now has impacted every realtor across the country.
Wow.
And so it now has meant that we have to do our business a little bit differently. In the past, I could certainly meet you and say, okay, you'd like to see 123 Smith Street. And we jump in the car and we go take a look at it. We're not allowed to do that anymore. Now you have to sign a document with me so that there is a record of the fact that we're going to work together. And some people have in the past have been apprehensive about that. I don't know you well enough, or I may not like you well enough. And do I want to sign, something that's going to commit me to you? So we've had to come back and rethink that and say, all right, well, maybe it's just a contract for this weekend. Maybe it's a contract for just this house. But NAR
Yeah.
is requiring now that I have to have that done. In addition to it, the seller, and I always thought that it was a Michigan thing, but we had always felt that it was the seller's obligation to pay our commission. So the seller would pay, we'll use 6%, which was standard, 3% to their agent, who's the listing agent, and then 3% to the buyer's agent, because the buyer's agent is bringing them their buyer. So the seller was paying a full 6%. Through the lawsuit, seller said, we didn't know we were paying that buyer's agent. Why should we have to pay them? So now the sellers are feeling if they know nothing else about this change, they know that piece of information. Oh, guess what? I don't have to pay. And so it has created this a little bit of awkward. I think it's because it's early, it's more awkward. We'll get
Yeah.
better at it, but it's a situation where now every time I want to show you a home, I have to call that agent ahead of time and I have to ask, is the seller going to pay my buyer's expense, my commission of 3%? Or if they're
Mhm.
not, are they willing to pay a portion of that? And then any portion that's not paid, I may have to go back to my client and say, you know what, the seller's only willing to do 2. Could you pay me the additional 1% so that I'm made whole and I have my 3%?
Yeah.
And some buyer's agents are going, I had one that said, I don't even understand why I should pay you. And I'm like, because you don't know the process well enough.
Right.
For you to ask me that kind of question, you really don't understand. So I have to get better at telling you what my value is. Once I tell you what my value is and what I bring to the table in
Yeah.
expertise and experience, you will understand. I understand the pitfalls and where deals can fall apart, and I know how to avoid them. I know how to negotiate through them. And so
Mhm.
I'm well worth my 3%.
Yeah, well, and I think it's interesting that you said that now what you have to do is help people to understand your value. And I think that's such a great perspective instead of flipping it and getting, defensive or argumentative, or, you're seeing this as an opportunity to educate. And what if we all looked at obstacles like that? What if we had a little bit of that? How big of changes would we see in the world around us if we were like, I wonder what I could do to make this situation better? I think that's so wonderful.
Well, I think what it is just what you're saying is you kind of have to, there's that knee jerk of, oh, what do you mean? So you don't do that, and you think about it and you say, okay, how can I see this from your perspective? You feel this way because of some feeling that you have.
Right.
And so what can I do to help you to understand this better? And
Mhm.
so then you become an advisor, then you become a helper, then you become
Right.
part of the same team rather than having to kind of knock heads and say, I'm going to defend myself. No, what I need
Yes.
to do is I need to help you to understand, the new world of real estate.
And it is a whole new world because things are changing. So I'm curious, what would your advice be to new realtors that are looking to create a memorable brand to kind of set themselves apart? What would you say to them to encourage them to help them on their journey?
I had to think about that a bit, but it came to me pretty quickly. And that's be authentic. The best version of you that you want to put out into that world is what your brand is. And so what do you want that to look like? What do you think your values are? And so how can you connect that into a business and say, okay, this is what I will give you. We have a buyer and we have their agent, and it's okay. What is it that you need from me so that I can plug in? And I have to be able, I'll tell you, the psychology in this job is
I feel like there's a
incredible.
little bit of a therapist in every real estate agent.
You have got that right. So, I mean, that's it. For somebody new who's starting off, know that this is a challenge. Know that this is a day by day. Know that no two transactions will ever be alike because you have a different buyer, you have a different seller, you have a different listing agent. Then there's a mortgage company, there's a title company, there's an appraiser. And so you're really trying to, wrap your arms around all of these people
Yeah.
and get that client from the beginning to the end. And so if you're new in this business, take a look and see, what do you have to offer? Because you'll be able to sell that so much easier than trying to be somebody else.
So well said. I love to talk to my clients, my branded clients, about their unique value proposition. And that's
Mhm.
just what you said so perfectly is, who are you? Who were you created to be? What have been the sum of your experiences that help you to be you? And I love that you shared your Aunt Rose story. I love that you shared about in the beginning with your husband saying you need something for yourself, honey. And I know that I'm kind of entering into like another section of my life now that I'm 45. I do have a toddler, so I'm not having college students just yet, but I'm at a different place in my life and I'm looking at everything differently. I feel like once you kind of get to a certain age, and it might be different for everyone, you start thinking about things from a different perspective. I have aging parents now, so I think about things a little bit differently. I'm thinking more about future stuff. I'm thinking about what is this world going to look like for my children?
Mhm.
What kind of legacy am I leaving? And I love your encouragement from your husband, to find something for yourself, to find a way to give back, to have purpose. And so I just loved hearing your story today. I am curious. Is there anything that you would love to tell our audience, before we kind of wrap up? Just any closing words?
Absolutely. I'm so glad you gave me one more opportunity because being of this age and of this vintage and being a baby boomer, I mean, I have looked at this and realized that there is this mass of people coming along. And I had always been told that, if you could solve a problem for, this group, you might live on a beach somewhere. Because there's a lot of them. And if you could solve a problem, well, I'm not really solving a problem, but what I did do was I got a designation as a seniors real estate specialist. And so I'm very proud of that. I'm marketing that.
Yes.
And you know what? People are valuing that because what it meant was I had to get further education and I had to
Yeah.
learn all about the different housing options that there are for seniors. And, there's so many and they're being built every day that I now have more connections to make as to what do you
Mhm.
offer? And I'm joining different groups. There's a Washington County Senior Leaders Group. And that's all people that are like-minded that want to help seniors. And so I am plugging in all of these places because I want to be of value to people like myself. Now, not everyone my age is going into an assisted living facility, but you know what? If you have that big old colonial and the bedrooms are upstairs and the laundry's in the basement, guess
Oh,
what?
yeah.
A condo downtown sounds like that could be a lot of fun to walk to coffee shops and dine out.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at all options depending upon the person's ability level. I'm enjoying this new thing so that I separate myself from the group and
Yeah.
I'm now creating a niche for myself that looks like people are starting to respond to.
Yeah, I think that's really smart. And that's helping with branding, setting yourself apart, looking at your unique value proposition, who you are, what stage of life, who you can serve, who you have the heart to serve.
Mhm.
I really, really appreciate that. And thank you so much for joining me on my podcast, for sharing your origin story, for sharing how you've overcome challenges. I'd love to help people get connected to you. What is the best way to get connected with Barbara Zinser?
Well, I have a website, I have an email address, I have obviously a cell phone. So,
Great.
um, do you want me
I'd
to
love to
share
put
those?
all that information in the show notes for everyone to be able to get connected with you
Okay.
so that you don't have to rattle off all the numbers and people try to frantically write that down. But this has been just a wonderful conversation, super uplifting. I love hearing how you're just moving forward and for sharing a little bit about the changes that are going on in real estate right now. So thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you, Trey. This has been fun, and you are a gem. Thank you for giving me the opportunity.
And we'll talk to you soon. Bye, everyone.
Bye.